So it's not the typical story. Everyone's always got I grew up, dreaming about it. And like as a kid, I was into it, but I kind of grew up in like a lower middle class kind of farm family. So it was always kind of like one of those, unattainable, I didn't think I could do it kind of things. And so another big passion I had was racing cars. So I did automotive racing for like 4 or 5 years. And the running joke was always like, oh, if I don't end up a professional race car driver, I'll end up a pilot. Well, I kind of hit the point where I'm like, I've never looked that deep into it. Like, what about it? And I kind of started the dig, and I'm like, oh man, I think I could actually kind of do this. And then, I think 3 months later, I ended up buying a plane and going all in. So, I started with, I went from racing dirt bikes as a kid into racing RCs, and then I did that at the national level.
Oh, wow.
And then I was like, well, if I can race the toy car, I can race a real car kind of thing. So then my first car was a 85 Trans Am that's now like only halfway an 85 Trans Am these days. It's more track car. And so I set that up for time trials, like NASA and SCCA, like time attack racing and hill climbs through like the NHA, and did that for 3-4 years. So I've just got the private right now. I'm about halfway done with the ground school for the instrument. And then kind of while I'm doing instrument, I'm also just building as much hours as possible because that's all going to count towards the commercial. So it's kind of like whenever I can fly, I'm up in the air. So the end goal is to shoot for like medical transport flying. So whatever I can do to get myself there is what I'm doing. But the thing with medical is it's more like, I like the work schedule, the 7 on, 7 off kind of deal. But also even beyond that, it's just the helping people, I guess. Because the way I grew up was I had an interesting, not great childhood. And so I like the whole feeling of I can help people at their worst times kind of thing.
Man, that's awesome.
It's tough to put on one thing. I think it's kind of all of it. Like it's just all of it mixed together, like the freedom and like the scenery and like the views that you get and like the camaraderie between, if you got like a group of 3 or 4 planes flying formation and everyone's hanging out and like just everything about it's great. Just for the money, I think would be the big thing, because depending on what you're doing, it can be pretty volatile, like in the job market. But even just beyond that, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're doing it for the money, it's still just a job and you'll end up unhappy at some point. So you really have to love what you're doing. Do you want me to narrow it down a bit? Because I had an interesting training experience. So my CFI even said, like, coming out of it, he's like, well, at least you're well-rounded because you've had pretty much every scenario imaginable. So living in Oregon, I guess one that was reoccurring is, so living in Oregon, it rains constantly. And I started my training in end of January last year. And so all through spring was pretty much, I finished my training, started summer. So all through spring was flying in the rain, really, like rain and not great weather. And so one reoccurring issue was water, whether it was water in the pitot-static or water in the fuel or just water. So we had issues with like water in the fuel on climb out because not all of it was able to get sumped out. And then, your engine's kind of cutting out at 100 feet and there's a Home Depot underneath you. So had anything from that to my second time soloing, had water in the pitot-static and didn't catch it until I was probably 5 to 10 miles from the airport. And then as I was getting ready to kind of come back, had a Cherokee 6 that was shooting out of the clouds pretty quick.
Wow.
Kind of catch me by surprise. So it's like, I've kind of had a lot, and I mean, even I've had carb ice. We had carb ice over the Cascades one time on a cross country. So there wasn't really a lot of outs.
Wow.
So yeah, I came out of it with a lot of, like, I don't want to say emergency awareness per se, but learning that like you can't get complacent like ever, because I mean it'll be like with the carb ice we were cruising along, just kind of chit chatting, and within we got a first little thump, and these Continental 200s are ice boxes. So I mean we got a little thump, and by the time we kind of looked at each other to make sure that we both felt that it wasn't just like that mountain flying kind of thing going on. And by the time we got the thump, reached for the carb heat, I mean, it dropped from like 2,400 RPM down to like 1,200. So, I mean, we pulled the carb heat in full power and it hesitated and caught itself. But like that close to the motor dying, and from there, it's a lot harder to recover that. Pretty good. I would say kind of with the complacency thing is you really can't get complacent. Like even like up at cruise, like you might, like, yes, you're just cruising in a straight line for like, for a couple hours even, but I'm constantly like monitoring oil pressure and like engine temps and just keeping an eye on everything at all times, because it'll catch you by surprise if you don't. Well, there's a few things. I think that it's definitely being more accessible now. Having a lot of these like Part 141 programs like mixed in with the colleges. Like I brought a fairly local community college that has its own 141, and so the people who can't pay out of pocket every single month or every hour of flying for 61, and if they're already in college, it also counts as college credits. So it's kind of a win-win, makes it easier to get your foot in the door. And then I would say another big thing is honestly like the evolution of the whole like electric stuff kind of going on. Is if they can get that figured out and like safe, then that would lower the operation cost, the hourly operating costs a ton, because you're not having to pay the $7 a gallon for fuel. Oh yeah, it's great, but in reality it's like, I guess I really don't. It's like yesterday, for example, the plan was for my fiance and I to stay in, to kind of have like a relaxing day, and we woke up and the sun's out and we're like, well, guess we're going flying. And we ended up in the plane like logged just about 4 hours of cross country time yesterday, and we were supposed to relax and stay in bed all day. So I guess my whole like flying and normal life balance is kind of out of whack, because it's being in Oregon, you don't really have a choice when you get to fly. It's either, I'm doing it now or I'm not gonna for a week.
Yeah.
So I guess on prices, if they keep going crazy, we'll see. But I've had my heart set on a 185 on like Alaskan bush tires, and like fully set up to be able to throw some mountain bikes in the back and go with my buddies and go out into Idaho or Montana and go mountain bike somewhere. Nervous, but I was confident at the same time. It helped that being in my own plane for all of the training and knowing the maintenance behind my plane, because I do a lot of owner assisted.
Yeah.
I was pretty confident in me handling the plane. I guess I was more worried about like comm stuff, like remembering to call out everything.
Yeah.
But it was pretty uneventful. It was just the normal 3 laps, and my instructor's like, congrats, and you're good to go.
That's awesome.
I guess just do your best to kind of keep that fire alive. It can get blown out pretty quick, and once it's burnt out, it's kind of hard to get that spark again. But I mean, as long as you stay on top of everything and keep flying and try not to get discouraged by, I mean, we all have bad flights. There's flights that you come back and you're like, man, I never want to get in a plane again. So honestly, just stick with it and try to keep the passion going.